David Harris stood at the window of his penthouse, gazing out over the glittering skyline of Chicago. The city stretched out before him like a canvas, filled with promise and opportunity. His company Harris Tech had taken the tech world by storm. Just a few short years ago, he was an ambitious entrepreneur with nothing more than an idea and a dream. Now he was the CEO of a rapidly growing tech empire. Success was his, and it had come in abundance. His gaze shifted across the room to where Emily, his wife, was standing. Emily Scott, no, Emily Harris now, was everything David had ever wanted. She was beautiful, graceful, and charming in a way that made everyone around her feel special. They made the perfect couple, and in the social circles they frequented, no one questioned their dynamic. Their penthouse was a showpiece of their success, a symbol of wealth and influence. Everything about their lives screamed perfection. David's life had always been meticulous, calculated, and orderly. He prided himself on his ability to maintain control, to keep everything running smoothly. Emily, always by his side, supported him in every aspect of his life, as though she were the perfect partner. Together, they hosted glamorous parties, mingled with high-profile clients, and lived a life that many only dreamed of. Their future seemed bright, untainted by any real trouble. But even in the midst of their perfect existence, there was something hidden beneath the surface. Something David couldn't yet see, something that would soon shatter the life he had so carefully built. It started with a simple gesture. Laura Mitchell, the couple's housekeeper, was cleaning their bedroom when she discovered something unusual. While dusting off a shelf in the far corner of the room, she found a small wooden box. Laura was the type of person who prided herself on being discreet, always avoiding prying into her employer's personal matters. But something about the box caught her attention. She noticed that it was hidden, tucked away behind a stack of books, as though it was being deliberately concealed. Intrigued, she opened it. Inside she found an assortment of items, some innocuous, others deeply unsettling. The first thing that caught her eye was a set of photographs, all taken from a distance, showing David in various locations, at his office, at a business meeting, and even jogging in the park. Each photo seemed to be taken without David's knowledge, his every move meticulously documented. As Laura sifted through the contents, she also found a life insurance policy, with Emily listed as the sole beneficiary. The policy alone seemed innocent enough until Laura saw the numbers. It was a massive payout, far higher than any life insurance policy should be. There was more. A passport, not David's but someone else's, bearing a different name, Victoria Reed. Laura paused. Why would Emily have a passport under a different identity? She had never suspected anything unusual about the woman, but this discovery made her second-guess everything. And then, tucked in the corner of the box, was a small vial of clear liquid. It seemed harmless, but the mystery of its presence in the box sent a chill down Laura's spine. Without thinking, Laura took a picture of the items with her phone and decided to show David. It was late in the evening when she finally worked up the courage to present the findings to him. David, at first, thought it was nothing. A simple misunderstanding, a collection of random documents and items with no real significance. But as he examined the contents more closely, his mind began to race. His eyes fell on the life insurance policy first. The number seemed too high, too carefully planned. Why would Emily, his perfect wife, need such a large payout? He pushed that thought aside for the moment and turned his attention to the passport. Emily under a different name? That didn't make sense. But as he looked at the photos, the pieces began to fall into place. The surveillance photos of him weren't just random shots. They were taken from angles that suggested someone had been following him for quite some time. He had never suspected it, but now he realized how carefully his every move had been monitored. David's heart began to pound in his chest. He had no idea what he was looking at, but he knew it was far more serious than he could have ever imagined. As he carefully examined the vial of liquid, his mind went into overdrive. What was all of this? What did it mean? It wasn't until later that night, after Emily had gone to bed, that David began to piece the information together. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. Someone had been planning something. But who? And why? The pictures, the insurance policy, the mysterious passport, they all pointed to something dark and dangerous, something that went far beyond any ordinary marriage. David knew he couldn't let this go. He had to find out the truth, and he had to do it before it was too late. His perfect life, it seemed, was nothing more than an illusion. The woman he loved, the woman who stood by him through every triumph, every victory, was hiding something far more sinister. For the first time in his life, David felt a sense of real fear, a fear that wasn't just about his business or his public image, but about something much more personal. something that threatened to tear apart everything he had worked so hard to build. As he sat there in the dimly lit room staring at the box, David realized that his life had just changed forever. The truth was out there waiting to be discovered. And David would stop at nothing to find it. David sat at his desk long into the night, unable to shake the growing sense of dread that settled in his stomach. The box lay on the table in front of him, its contents now spread out in disarray. His mind was racing, each thought spiraling faster than the last. Emily, or rather Victoria Reed, had been hiding something big. The passport, the life insurance policy, the surveillance photos, they all pointed to a carefully orchestrated plan, but to what end? He picked up the passport again, flipping it over in his hands. The name Victoria Reed stared back at him, and for the first time, David questioned everything about his marriage. Emily had always been open with him, or so he thought. They'd been together for 5 years and she'd been a constant presence in his life. From the outside they seemed like the perfect couple. He was successful, admired, respected, and Emily was his beautiful, supportive wife. Together they had built an empire. But now David realized how little he truly knew about her. His phone buzzed, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a text from Emily, just a simple message. Asterisk, can we talk when you get home? I miss you. Asterisk. David stared at the message, his heart sinking further. How could she be so unaware of the storm that was brewing? Did she really think she could continue deceiving him? He couldn't bring himself to reply just yet. Instead he picked up the photos. Each one seemed so mundane. A shot of him leaving his office, another of him jogging in the park, a few taken at random moments throughout his day. But as he stared at them he saw the pattern. Whoever was behind these photos had been tracking his every move for months, perhaps even longer. And that could only mean one thing. Emily had been involved from the start. David's thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of his phone. It was Laura. David, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I've been thinking. I didn't want to say anything before, but now. I think you need to know. The pictures, the passport, it doesn't make sense, does it? No, Laura. It doesn't, David replied, his voice firm but filled with uncertainty. But I need to know more. I need to know everything. I'm not sure who I can trust right now. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Laura spoke again. There's more, David. I didn't want to get involved, but I'm afraid you're not the only one being watched. I've seen things that don't add up. Emily, or Victoria, I guess, has always been so careful, so perfect. But there's something off about the way she looks at you sometimes. Like she's waiting for something to happen. David felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I've seen her talking to Ryan Palmer, your business rival, Laura said, her voice shaking with fear. She's been meeting with him. A lot. I don't know what they're planning, but it doesn't look good. And I think they're working together. The name Ryan Palmer struck David like a lightning bolt. Ryan Palmer, the man he had once considered just a rival in business, a competitor he could easily outsmart. But now the idea that Ryan was involved in his wife's betrayal twisted his gut. How far had Emily, or Victoria, gone in her deceit? He thanked Laura for the information and ended the call. His thoughts were spinning. Ryan Palmer. The name echoed in his head as if it were the key to unlocking the entire mystery. Why would Emily be working with him? What was their connection? David needed answers, and he needed them fast. The next few days were a blur. David kept up the facade of being the clueless husband, all the while secretly digging deeper into Emily's life. He tapped into his company's resources, pulling up every bit of information he could find about her. There was little to uncover, as Emily had always been careful about her digital footprint. But the more he searched, the more it became clear that she was hiding something far bigger than he could have imagined. He decided to confront her. But not yet. He couldn't risk revealing his hand too soon. Instead he devised a plan. He would stage a crisis at his company, something that would push Emily and Ryan into action. He needed to provoke them, to make them believe that David was no longer a threat, that he had become weak and vulnerable. So he engineered a fake financial issue, something that would catch the media's attention and stir up rumors. The company's stocks began to drop, and the headlines were filled with speculation about Harris Tech's future. It wasn't enough to ruin the company, just enough to make Emily and Ryan think they had won. David sat back and waited. He watched as Emily began to act differently. She seemed more distant, more calculating. And then, the moment he had been waiting for came. Emily, thinking her plan was about to unfold, made a call to Ryan, her voice low, almost a whisper. David had set up surveillance, knowing he had to be certain of their next move. As Emily walked into their penthouse that evening, David confronted her. There was no turning back now. He had all the evidence he needed. He had recordings, photos, bank statements, and the damning passport, everything he needed to expose her once and for all. Emily, David said, his voice cold, or should I say, Victoria? Emily froze. Her face, once so confident and poised, was now a mask of fear and uncertainty. David continued, I know everything. The pictures, the passport, the insurance policy, the meetings with Ryan Palmer, it's all there. I've been watching you. For a moment, Emily stood motionless. Then her mask of composure slipped and she laughed bitterly. You think you know everything, David? You think I've been playing you? Well, you're not the only one who's been pretending. David's heart raced. What do you mean? Emily's eyes narrowed. You think you're the victim here, but you've been part of the plan all along. You just don't know it yet. The words hit David like a punch to the gut. What are you talking about? He demanded, stepping closer. Emily smiled a cold, twisted smile. You'll see soon enough, David. But not tonight. Before he could respond, Emily turned on her heel and walked out of the room. David stood there, his mind spinning. What had she meant? And who else was involved in this twisted web of deceit? His life, he realized, was no longer his own. The woman he loved, the woman he thought he knew, had played him from the very beginning. The game was far from over. And David was just beginning to realize how deep the betrayal went. David couldn't sleep that night. Emily's cryptic words echoed in his mind as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Asterisk, you think you're the victim here, but you've been part of the plan all along. You just don't know it yet. Asterisk, the finality in her voice was chilling, and the implication of what she said gnawed at him. What plan was she talking about? Had he truly been part of some larger scheme, or was this just her attempt to throw him off balance? His phone buzzed beside him, breaking the silence. It was another text from Emily, asterisk, we need to talk, David. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was trying to protect us. Asterisk, trying to protect us? The words were nonsensical. How could everything he had just uncovered, the surveillance, the passport, the insurance policy, be about protecting them? There was no way this was about him. This was about something much darker, something far more dangerous than he could comprehend. David's thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. He froze. Was it Emily? Or someone else? He stood up quickly and glanced through the peephole. It was Laura. His heart skipped a beat and he opened the door. David, Laura said in a hushed tone, glancing around as if afraid someone might see them. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. David motioned for her to come in, his mind racing. What's going on, Laura? She closed the door behind her and lowered her voice. I've been doing some digging too. I didn't know how far this went, but I found something else. Something about Ryan Palmer. She handed him a folder that she had been carrying. I don't think he's just a business rival. He's connected to a lot of shady people, people who have influence in places we can't even imagine. He's not just trying to destroy your company, he's trying to ruin your life. David took the folder and opened it. Inside were documents, photos, and a list of names. They were all tied to an underground criminal organization, one that had dealings in several industries including tech. Ryan Palmer wasn't just a businessman, he was involved in something much larger, something illegal, and Emily was somehow linked to it. This is insane, David muttered, his hand trembling as he flipped through the pages. How does she fit into all of this? I don't know, Laura replied, her voice shaking. But I think she's more than just a pawn in his game. I think she's the key to everything. They've been working together for much longer than we realized. David's mind began to race. Emily, or Victoria, had been part of this criminal network all along. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. She wasn't just after his wealth, she was after something bigger. This wasn't just about a life insurance policy. This was about control, power, and a larger conspiracy. David knew then that he couldn't wait any longer. He had to confront Emily again. He needed answers and he needed them now. The next day he prepared himself for the confrontation. He reviewed the evidence he had gathered, the photos, the insurance policy, the documents Laura had just given him, and made sure everything was in order. He couldn't afford to slip up. This wasn't just about saving his marriage anymore. This was about saving his life. As evening fell, Emily returned home. David was already sitting in the living room waiting for her. He had called her earlier, telling her that they needed to talk, that there was no avoiding it anymore. He knew she would come back to face him and he was ready. When Emily walked through the door, she stopped short when she saw him sitting there, his expression cold and unreadable. I told you we needed to talk, Emily, David said, his voice steady but filled with an underlying tension. It's time for the truth. All of it. Emily closed the door behind her, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice betraying none of the anxiety David knew she must be feeling. The passport. The life insurance policy. The surveillance photos. The offshore accounts. Ryan Palmer. I know everything, Emily. You can't lie your way out of this anymore. Emily's face remained calm, but David could see the flicker of something. Fear, anger, or perhaps both. She took a step forward, trying to regain control of the situation. David, I can explain all of this. You don't understand what's really going on. David stood up, facing her head on. No, I don't think you understand. I know exactly what's going on. You've been using me, manipulating me, and I'm done being your pawn. Emily's eyes hardened, and for the first time, David saw a glimpse of the woman behind the mask. You don't know what you're dealing with. You think you have all the answers, but you have no idea what's at stake here. You've been a part of this from the start, David. You just don't see it yet. The words stung, but David refused to back down. No, Emily. You're the one who's been playing me. You've been plotting this whole thing, using me for your own gain. You've been lying to me this entire time. And Ryan Palmer, don't think I haven't figured him out. I know what he's really after, and you're in this with him. All along. Emily's face flickered with something, guilt, perhaps, or fear, before she quickly masked it with a practiced smile. You have no idea, David. None of this is what you think. I didn't want any of this to happen. But sometimes you have to make sacrifices to survive. David's heart pounded. Sacrifices? Emily, you've been trying to kill me. You've been setting me up for your own personal gain. You're not a victim, you're the villain in this story. For a moment, Emily stood silently, her eyes flickering as if she were considering something. And then she spoke. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to hurt you? I did what I had to do. I did what I needed to survive. You don't understand what it's like to be trapped in this life, David. Her words were chilling, but David wasn't about to show any mercy. I don't care what your excuses are, Emily. I'm done. This ends now. Emily's face twisted into a mask of anger and desperation. You think this is over? You think you've won? You haven't even begun to understand the game you've been playing. With those words, she turned and stormed out of the room, leaving David standing in the quiet darkness. He had the evidence, he had confronted her, but he knew this wasn't over. Emily was not going to give up easily. David's mind was reeling, his heart pounding in his chest as Emily stormed out of the room. Her words hung in the air, chilling him to the core. Asterisk, you haven't even begun to understand the game you've been playing. Asterisk, her voice was filled with a quiet menace, as if she were warning him of the storm yet to come. The silence that followed felt like an eerie calm before the inevitable chaos. David stood motionless in the living room, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on him. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of what was unfolding. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his marriage, had been a lie. The woman he trusted with everything had been plotting his downfall from the start, and now, as the truth started to unravel, David felt the full force of the danger he was in. He knew Emily wasn't just going to let this go. She had shown him her true nature, cold, calculating, and willing to go to any lengths to get what she wanted. But even more terrifying was the realization that she was only one part of the larger puzzle. Ryan Palmer. The criminal network. Emily's connection to it all. This was no longer just a personal betrayal. It was a conspiracy, and David was at the center of it. The pieces were falling into place, but there was still so much David didn't understand. What was the ultimate goal? What was the larger scheme Emily and Ryan were working toward? And most importantly, who else was involved? Determined to get answers, David knew he couldn't let his guard down. Not now. Not ever again. His first move was clear. He had to get ahead of Emily. He couldn't allow her to manipulate the situation any longer. She had already proven that she was capable of anything, and David wasn't about to let her take him down without a fight. He decided to take a more aggressive approach. He would gather more evidence, expose every dark secret Emily had, and make sure she could never turn the tables on him. The next morning, David met with his most trusted confidant, Richard, his company's head of security. Richard had been with him since the beginning, and David trusted him like a brother. Richard, I need your help, David said, his voice urgent. I need to know everything about Ryan Palmer. Every detail, every connection. I don't care how far back you have to go. I want to know what he's been hiding, and I want it all. Richard nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. You got it, David. I'll dig deep, I'll find everything. But you know this won't be easy. Palmer's network is far-reaching. If he's connected to the people I think he is, it's not just business. It's something far more dangerous. David's eyes narrowed. I know. But we're running out of time. Emily's not going to sit back and wait for me to expose her. She'll make her move soon. I need to be ready. As Richard set to work, David turned his attention back to Emily. He couldn't stop thinking about the cryptic words she had left him with. Asterisk, you haven't even begun to understand the game. Asterisk, what did she mean? Was she referring to something he hadn't seen yet? A larger plan? Or was this just her way of keeping him in the dark, a final attempt to control him? David couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something, a crucial piece of the puzzle that, if discovered, would reveal the true extent of Emily's treachery. He spent the rest of the day going through every file, every document, and every photo he had collected, hoping for a breakthrough. But the answers didn't come. Later that evening, David received an unexpected call. It was Laura. I've got something, she said, her voice hurried. I don't know if it's important, but you need to see this. David felt a surge of hope. What is it? I've been looking into some of the people connected to Ryan Palmer, Laura explained. I found something strange. There's a connection between Palmer and a company Emily has been investing in. It's not just any company though. It's a shell corporation, one that exists solely for laundering money. And it's tied to offshore accounts. David's pulse quickened. Money laundering? He repeated, almost to himself. What does this have to do with Emily? I'm not sure yet, Laura admitted. But there's more. The company has connections to people in high places. Some of them have direct ties to organized crime. If Emily is involved with this, it could mean much more than just a financial scheme. It could mean she's been using you to cover up something far worse. David sat back in his chair, his mind racing. Emily had been playing a long game, much longer than he had realized. This wasn't just about her securing a fortune through his life insurance. It was about something deeper, more sinister. Money laundering, organized crime. These weren't just business deals. They were life and death stakes. The implications were enormous. If Emily was involved in this, it meant she had betrayed him on a level he couldn't even comprehend. He had to act fast. He couldn't let her, or Ryan Palmer, get away with this. David immediately called Richard, updating him on the new information. Find out everything you can about that shell corporation. Who's behind it? Who are they laundering money for? I need to know who's in charge. Richard's voice was steady. Got it, David. I'll get on it right away. As the night stretched on, David's thoughts swirled. Emily had been a master manipulator, but now, with this new information, he had the upper hand. He had to expose her, not just to protect himself, but to stop whatever dark forces she had been working with from destroying everything he had worked for. But deep down, David knew that the most dangerous part of the game was still ahead. Emily and Ryan Palmer were more than just enemies. They were part of a network that could destroy him, his company, and his life. The fight wasn't just for survival, it was for everything he held dear. And as David braced himself for the storm that was coming, he realized that his battle had only just begun. The following days were a blur of constant surveillance, clandestine meetings, and ever-growing tension. David was no longer the unsuspecting husband. He was the hunted. As he dove deeper into the rabbit hole of Emily's secrets, every step felt like stepping further into an abyss he wasn't sure he could climb out of. The carefully constructed life he had built with her was slowly, painfully, being stripped away. Richard had uncovered a breakthrough. The shell corporation Emily had been investing in had deeper connections than anyone could have anticipated. As it turned out, the company wasn't just involved in laundering money, it was linked to a network of illegal arms trading. There were even ties to human trafficking. David's stomach turned as he processed the magnitude of what he was facing. Emily, his wife, was entangled in a criminal enterprise far beyond anything he had imagined. David knew he had to confront her again, but this time, it couldn't be just about the photos or the life insurance policy. He had to dig deeper. He had to understand why she was willing to risk everything, including his life, for this network of criminals. The woman he had once trusted was now his biggest threat. That night, as David sat in his study, going over the details of the Shell Corporation's financial transactions, he felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. Emily was always a step ahead, but now, with all this information, he had the chance to turn the tide. Just then his phone buzzed. It was a message from Laura. Asterisk, you need to see this. I found something that links Emily to Ryan Palmer's criminal connections. Asterisk. David's pulse quickened. Asterisk, what is it? Asterisk, he typed back. The reply came almost immediately. Asterisk, it's a wire transfer. Emily's name is on it. She's been funneling money into Palmer's network. I think she's more involved in this than just as a participant. She might be the mastermind behind it all. Asterisk. David could hardly breathe as he stared at the screen. Emily had never seemed like the kind of person who would run an operation like this. She was always charming, graceful, the perfect wife. But now, everything was crumbling, and the person he thought he knew was slipping further away with each new revelation. He quickly called Richard, briefing him on the new information. "Get me everything on these wire transfers. I need to know how deep Emily's involvement goes with Palmer. And don't trust anyone who's connected to him. I need this to be clean." Richard's voice was resolute. "I'm on it, David. We'll get this sorted. Stay safe." David hung up, his thoughts consumed by the enormity of the situation. Emily wasn't just a victim of circumstances. She was the architect of her own betrayal, and the realization hit David harder than any of the other discoveries. He had been played, manipulated, and worse, used as a pawn in a much larger, far more dangerous game. The next evening, he decided it was time to confront her again. Emily had been distant, cold, and evasive. Her behavior had only confirmed his worst fears. This time he would not only expose her, he would take back control of his own life. David had planned everything carefully. He would wait until after dinner when they would be alone in the penthouse. He would confront her with the evidence, the money laundering, the ties to Ryan Palmer, the wire transfers, everything. He would watch her face as she realized that the lies had caught up with her. But as he walked into the dining room that evening, a sense of unease settled in. Emily was sitting at the table, her eyes fixed on him, but there was no warmth in her gaze. Instead, there was something colder, more calculating. A smirk played at the corner of her lips. "I know what you're doing, David," she said, her voice quiet but full of venom. David's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" Emily stood up slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "You think you can just expose me, tear everything apart? You're playing a dangerous game, David. You think you know me, but you have no idea what you're dealing with." David felt a chill run down his spine. "I know everything, Emily. The money laundering, the connections to Ryan Palmer, the wire transfers. It's over. You're going to pay for everything you've done." She tilted her head slightly as though considering his words. "You really think it's that simple?" she asked, her voice low. "You think I'm just some villain in your story? No, David. You've been part of this plan all along, whether you like it or not." David's mind raced. "What are you talking about? I've been trying to uncover the truth. You've been lying to me." Emily's expression softened slightly, almost pitying. "You really don't see it, do you? All these years you've been playing your role just like I've been playing mine. But now we're at the endgame, David. And you're not going to win." David's stomach twisted. The fear he had pushed aside earlier began to creep in, but he refused to let it control him. "You're not going to get away with this," he said, his voice steady. Emily smiled, a cold, eerie smile. "I already have." At that moment, David heard a sound from the hallway. The door to the penthouse opened, and before he could react, a group of men in suits entered, surrounding him. His heart raced as he realized what was happening. Emily stepped back, her gaze cold and triumphant. "I don't think you understand, David. You're not in control anymore. They're my men and you've been outplayed. The game is over." David's breath caught in his throat. These weren't just regular henchmen. These men were professional, skilled, and dangerous. They had come to silence him, to finish what Emily and Ryan had started. "Get him," Emily said, her voice steady and final. David's mind was racing. He knew he couldn't fight his way out of this, but he wasn't going down without a fight. He had one last card to play, one last chance to expose her for good. In a flash he turned, bolting toward the study. He had to reach his phone. He had to send the evidence to Richard before they could stop him. As he ran, he could hear the footsteps behind him, the men closing in. He was running out of time. David's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted toward the study. The sound of footsteps grew louder behind him. The men were gaining ground. He knew he had to reach his phone to send the evidence to Richard before they caught him. Every second felt like a lifetime, and with each step, the walls seemed to close in on him. He reached the study door, his fingers trembling as he grabbed the handle and yanked it open. Without looking back, he dashed inside, locking the door behind him. His mind raced as he grabbed his phone from the desk. His hands were shaking so badly that it took him several tries to unlock the screen. He quickly navigated to the folder containing all the evidence he had gathered, the wire transfers, the documents linking Emily to Ryan Palmer's criminal network, and the recordings he had made of their conversations. His finger hovered over the send button. His plan was simple. Send it to Richard, make sure it got into the right hands and expose Emily's entire operation. But as his finger lingered over the screen, something shifted in his gut. He wasn't just up against Emily anymore. He was up against an entire network, a criminal syndicate that reached far beyond anything he had anticipated. Even if he sent the evidence, would it be enough to take them down? Would it be enough to keep him alive? He had no choice. He hit send. Just as the message was sent, he heard a loud bang on the door. The men were trying to break it down. His pulse spiked and panic began to claw at the edges of his mind. He glanced around the room. The study was large, filled with bookshelves and papers scattered across the desk. He needed a weapon, something to defend himself. He grabbed a heavy paperweight from the desk, his hands still shaking. It was a weak defense, but it was all he had. The door shuddered again, and this time the men's voices were clear. "Open the door, Harris. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be." David's mind raced. He had a few moments, maybe a minute if he was lucky, before they would break through. He had to think fast. The window. His only escape route. David bolted to the window, pulling back the curtains. The sight of the city below made his stomach drop, but there was no choice. He grabbed the desk chair and threw it toward the glass. The chair shattered the window with a loud crash, sending shards of glass falling to the ground below. He didn't hesitate. David jumped onto the windowsill, his heart hammering in his chest. He could hear the men on the other side of the door, their voices growing more frantic. They were almost through. Without looking back, David leaped from the windowsill, tumbling into the night air. The world seemed to spin around him as he fell, but he managed to twist his body midair, landing awkwardly but safely on the fire escape below. The impact sent a jolt of pain through his body, but he couldn't afford to stop. He had to keep moving. His breath came in short bursts as he hurried down the fire escape. The streets of Chicago were bustling with late-night activity, but no one seemed to notice the man running for his life. David's mind raced as he dashed through alleyways, down darkened streets, and toward the only place he could think to go, Richard's safe house. He pulled out his phone, quickly dialing Richard's number. The phone rang twice before Richard answered, his voice urgent. "David? What's going on? I just got the files you sent. They're unbelievable. But are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm not safe, Richard," David panted, his voice filled with panic. "They're coming for me. Emily and Palmer, they've got an entire operation. I've exposed everything, but I need backup. I need to get to you. Now." "Hold tight, David," Richard said. "I'm sending someone your way. You can't keep running. Get to the rendezvous point. I'll meet you there." David didn't question the plan. He simply followed Richard's instructions, continuing to run through the streets as fast as his legs could carry him. The adrenaline coursing through his veins kept him moving despite the pain in his chest and the ache in his limbs. He couldn't afford to stop, not now. He arrived at the rendezvous point, a quiet, dimly lit corner of the city where Richard had arranged for a car to pick him up. As David approached the car, he was greeted by a familiar face, Richard's personal security team. They wasted no time, ushering him into the car and speeding off toward a secure location. David slumped back in the seat, trying to catch his breath, but his mind was still racing. "We need to take them down," he muttered. "Emily and Palmer. They're too dangerous to leave out there." Richard's voice was calm but filled with urgency. "We will, David. I've already alerted the authorities. But right now you need to lay low. We'll figure out the next move. You've done the hard part." David nodded, his mind still spinning. The evidence was out there, but would it be enough to bring down the criminal network? Would it be enough to keep Emily and Ryan from silencing him forever? As the car sped through the night, David's thoughts were interrupted by a familiar sound, the ping of an incoming message. He looked at his phone. It was from Laura. Asterisk, "David, I found something. It's bigger than we thought. Emily's been planning this for years. Palmer's just the beginning." Asterisk. David's heart sank. If Emily had been planning this for years, it meant they were just scratching the surface of a far more complex conspiracy. The game wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And as the car disappeared into the night, David realized that he had become more than just a victim of betrayal. He had become the key to bringing down a dangerous criminal empire. The fight for his survival wasn't just a battle for his life, it was a war to stop a network of corruption that threatened everything he had worked for.